Ah yes, the Nintendo Wii. Many Nintendo fans associate this console with revolutionary modern classics such as Super Mario Galaxy, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, or Kirby's Return to Dreamland. Others might remember the console for multiplayer matches in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, or racing each other in Mario Kart Wii. One single game stands above all as one of the most recognizable game of the console that both gamers and non-gamers recognize, and that is Wii Sports. Being a simple collection of motion-controlled sports games, it's been played by everyone from the hardcore gamer to those that don't even play video games. The game would be used for physical therapy in the medical field, win multiple awards from various video game conferences, and is remembered by pretty much everyone that has played or even seen anything of the Wii. Considering that the Wii itself was a new system at the time, you gotta wonder how the development of this game went. Not to mention, does this simple game have anything left within its game files? Well, today in the beta files, as suggested by both of these advocates of motion-controlled sports games, I'll be taking a look at the original Wii Sports for the Nintendo Wii. Wii Sports was developed by Software Development Group 2 at Nintendo's famous Entertainment Analysis and Development Division. The game's producer was Katsuya Eguchi, and he planned to create a game that would be able to take advantage of the Wii's new motion controls, to make players feel that they were actually in the game. Each type of game in Wii Sports was developed by 3 different developers. Keizo Ota, known as the producer for Animal Crossing Wild World, and designed levels in Super Mario World, was the one who directed Tennis. Yoshikazu Yamashita, who was a programmer for Pikmin and its sequel, and would be senior game director for Super Mario Maker, was the director for baseball and boxing. And finally, the future director of Nintendo Land, and co-producer of Ring Fit Adventure, Takayuki Shimamura, was in charge of directing golf and bowling. Since Nintendo was developing a game on newly developed hardware, the development of Wii Sports started out with testing out the extent of what the new Wii Remote can do. Many different prototype games were developed to test the new remote, and even though the Wii Remote didn't have a final design yet, the entire division knew that the final design of the controller would be rod-shaped in some way. Ota ran with this concept, and created a prototype game that was just a simple tennis game. Baseball was created when Yamashita was looking at the various prototype games around the office one day, and noticed that no one was creating a baseball game. So he created a simple prototype, got other members to jump onto his project, and would eventually partner up with Ota's tennis team for some extra support that his game needed, to create a full baseball game. On the other side of the division, Shimamura created a golf putting game prototype. He felt very dubious about creating a full-fledged golf game at first, because he would need to design many different courses and terrain, and he didn't have a full team to do it. Eventually, he received word about Ota's and Yamashita's dev teams, and jumped on board for helping creating courses for a full-fledged golfing game. After finishing the 3 games, the team then realized that baseball didn't have an appeal to countries that don't normally play it, like Europe for example. This left the game with only 2 games to choose from, and they decided that other games needed to be created to give a greater variety of sports games. The team started development on a bowling and boxing game, to appease worldwide audiences, as both of these sports are known throughout the world. It was originally decided that whichever one of these games finished the fastest would be included in the final. However, both games progressed so far into the development that the entire team decided to include both games into the final product. Eguchi would eventually become overwhelmed with the number of game prototypes being made in the division, that he had trouble tying all of the games together. Shigeru Miyamoto decided to jump onto the project for a bit, so that things could get sorted in time for the Wii's release. It's said that he sat down and gave instructions on a single piece of paper consisting of organizing the prototype games, some of which would become Wii Sports, while other prototypes would be incorporated into Wii Play. He also came up with the concept of the playtime for Wii Sports being posted on the Wii's calendar message board, as a way to entice people to use the Wii daily. The entire team also decided to scrap fleshing out games, and keep them simple pick-up-and-play games, to make it in time for the Wii's launch day. With that problem out of the way, they turned to the other major problem. What kind of characters would be in this game? The prototypes just had simple models that obviously couldn't be put in the final game. At one point, the team was considering having people take pictures and use the Wii's SD card reader to take those pictures and put them on in-game character models, something akin to face raiders on the 3DS. That idea was quickly scrapped, and they resorted to putting Nintendo's famous plumber into the prototypes. The easy fix didn't sit well with the team though. They wanted to feel like they were playing as themselves instead of Mario, so he was eventually removed from the game as well. Pulling some inspiration from some past projects such as Mario Artist Talent on the Nintendo 64 disk drive, and the Unreleased stage debut game, They created software that would enable the player to make their own character, and took Miyamoto's suggestion of having the models look like Japanese kokeshi dolls. It was decided that the software would benefit more if it stayed on the system itself, rather than making it for one game, which would end up as the Mii channel. The first time the press would ever see Wii Sports would be a few days before 2006's E3 event, where Nintendo invited some of the press to try out tennis. The original name wasn't Wii Sports Tennis though, as Nintendo just decided to name it Nintendo Sports Tennis at the time of the preview. It wasn't until the actual Nintendo press conference during E3, where Satoru Iwata would state that the game, now called Wii Sports, would be bundled with the system at launch. However, this wasn't always the case. Fast forward to 2019, Reggie Fils-Aimé reveals during a presentation at Cornell University that Wii Sports was planned to be a standalone game. The reason for that is, well, I'll leave it to Reggie to tell the story.
And again, in any organization, there needs to be healthy debate. And I was fortunate, I was thrilled with the reaction when I put up Mr. Iwata's photo. Mr. Iwata was a key mentor of mine, a key business partner. We did not always agree. But in the end, the results for the company were stellar. What was the nature of the disagreement? The nature was, here was an ability to sell the game, whether it was for $40 or $50, and you're foregoing the revenue by packing it into the hardware. That was the conundrum. And in the end, the Japanese market made a decision to sell the software separately. We made the decision to include it. And we were fortunate. The results speak for themselves. It was the right call. But that was the nature of the disagreement.
During an interview with GameSpot, Satoru Iwata even admitted that he thought that the people would buy the Wii to play Twilight Princess, rather than Wii Sports. He did eventually agree to bundle Wii Sports with the system, because Iwata believed that people that played the game would pass around how fun the game was by word of mouth, and thus increase sales of the Wii in America and Europe. Nintendo showed off the game and console very frequently during the press conference, and gained the attention of a lot of people during E3. And when I mean a lot, I mean a lot of people. Just look at this line. Despite the number of people wanting to try out the Wii and Wii Sports alongside it, there was not a lot of footage that was taken on the show floor. The E3 press conference had video footage of the game that was shown off, so let's begin with that. The very first thing relating to Wii Sports that's shown off during the conference doesn't have to do with anything relating to the released sports titles. Rather, we get a glimpse of this supposed airplane game. I'll talk about this airplane game a bit later, because we have more footage of this game that was taken on the show floor. Instead, let's first talk about the second thing relating to Wii Sports that was shown off, and that just happens to be baseball. The first thing that's different here is the scoreboard looks a lot like an actual baseball scoreboard, but the footage is too blurry to make out what they specifically say at the moment. Near the end of the E3 press conference, Miyamoto, Iwata, and Reggie invited one of the members of the audience to try out Wii Tennis for the first time. We can see here an early version of an Iwata Mii when the camera zooms into the projected gameplay screen. At the end of the tennis match, if you can listen very closely, you can hear a different announcer for Wii Sports. This might be drowned out by the conversation between the three Nintendo representatives, but listen closely and you might hear it.
Oh, tied game!
Moving from the presentation to the actual show floor, as I stated before, not a lot of footage of Wii Sports was captured on the floor itself. There are a lot of interviews on the new Wii console and how the Wii Sports game feels, but they rarely show gameplay, and what gameplay they do show is only relegated to a few seconds that I can't analyze. However, we do have a substitute for this issue. A lot of early Wii Sports gameplay was captured at the, and I'm sorry if I pronounced this wrong, Leipzig Games Convention, otherwise known as GC, in Germany a few months after E3, so it's fair to assume both demos are relatively the same. One of the things that seems to be missing from the tennis game is, well, a crowd to watch the game. It seems that the court is empty as there are no other Miis other than the ones playing the tennis game. The stadium walls are also labeled with the Nintendo logo instead of the Wii Sports logo seen in the final game, and the walls seem a bit shorter. Each character is also labeled with a player icon in the form of the Wii Remote lights that one could have spotted at the E3 presentation. Next up is some footage of the early version of baseball, and with this footage, we can make a clearer distinction of what the symbols are on the billboard in the background. It seems that the early version had custom logos for the red and blue teams in baseball. The blue team had this shield design for their logo, while the red team has this baseball and what seems to be baseball bats crossing in an X pattern. A possible reason for this removal is the fact that since a Mii can be customized to have many different colors other than red or blue, that would mean that the development team would have to make custom logos for each color, which I imagine they didn't want to make more work for themselves and decided to drop the team logos entirely. When you compare the scoreboard between the early and final versions of the game, a lot of differences can be noticed right off the bat. The early version has many different logos and symbols. However, it's possible to decipher what they mean rather easily. The rightmost bottom indicator with the B, S, and O letters can only be the indicators for whenever you get a ball, safe, and an out, just like the indicators that can be seen in the final game. Next to that on the left is what seems to be a baseball diamond, and to the left of that is a versus banner alongside the names of player 1 and player 2 at the bottom. Now, this is just my speculation, but I believe this board was going to function as your entire indicator for who's playing against who, how many bases are loaded, and how many balls, safes, and outs you had in the game, alongside your score. I can't verify this claim though, as the indicator doesn't move when the gameplay is going on in the footage, so all of these could just very well be placeholders for all I know. Despite Golf only having a total of 30 seconds of gameplay shown off, there are some elements that make it different compared to its final counterpart. For one, the bar for the golf swing has different textures and was moved from the bottom of the screen to the left side by the final game. The trees in the background are also a bit colorful, with a lighter gray compared to the darker brown colored trees in the final game. Lastly, let's go over a short little trailer of Wii Sports that has an early version of the boxing game. Despite this trailer only showing the multiplayer mode, there is one big notable difference, that being the meter at the bottom of the screen. As you may have noticed from the gameplay footage, the circle health meter for the two players is missing, and doesn't even show up when they hit each other. Instead, they relegated the health meter to the bottom of the screen, alongside the name, the portraits of the players, the timer, and the round indicator. And I know it has to be the health meter due to in the trailer, as this player is knocked out, the last green bar of the meter turns orange and slowly disappears. The timer and round indicator itself is in a different shape compared to its final counterpart, being in a trapezoid-like graphic rather than this boxed-in one. Before moving on to the files inside of Wii Sports, I have to address a part of the game that was shown off at E3 that is not in the final version, and that of course, is what is known as Wii Sports Airplane. An airplane game of some sort was shown off at various booths during E3 and was labeled by the title as Wii Sports Airplane. A lot of you might recognize this game because it is essentially an early version of Island Flyover in the sequel to Wii Sports Resort. Despite the boost feature of the plane being available, the game's island has some obvious differences in this early prototype. For one, the main plaza where the buildings of the resort are situated in are there for the most part, minus some additions like the bowling alley for example. However, the rest of the buildings like the lighthouse and the castle on the island are missing, and we just get houses that the Miis live in, I'm assuming. The various Miis themselves are scattered across the island just like in the final game, except they're not carrying balloons and are seemingly as big as the plane. The volcano hasn't been perfected in this version of the island, as it seems to just be a simple snow-capped mountain. The Red Iron Bridge, as it would be later called, is missing its iconic red suspension wires and arches, and there also doesn't seem to be anything on the backside of this island, as you can slightly see here. In the final game, they've managed to add in some runes so that the backside of the island is more exciting to see. The last thing to note is the plane itself, as the design and color is a possible reference of the plane seen in the original Pilot Wings game on the Super Nintendo. That's about all the differences that I can find in the playable demo, but there's an important note regarding this specific game mode. Originally, some people of the press had thought that this game was going to be a new demo for a new Pilot Wings game. While that kinda did happen with the release of Pilot Wings Resort for the 3DS in 2011, Iguchi revealed during a May 2006 IGN interview that he believed the game would become part of the Wii Sports series in the future. That game is not Wii Sports Resort, but rather an unreleased game named Wii Motor Sports, which Nintendo revealed to IGN after E3 in July of 2006. According to IGN editor Mark Bozon, this game would include the previous airplane game and a water ski game. This water ski game, nicknamed Wii Jet Ski, was being headed by the Wave Race 64 creator, as Bozon puts it. He could have been referring to director Shinya Takahashi, who's more known for his work as a producer on many Nintendo games, including Pilot Wings Resort, Fire Emblem Awakening, and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Unfortunately, this little snippet of Wii Motor Sports was the last we ever heard from Nintendo, as nothing about the project was ever said after July of 2006, and it can be concluded that the project was silently cancelled at some point. Luckily, the airplane and jet ski game would eventually make it to Wii Sports Resort in the form of Island Overview and Power Cruising. That's about all of the beta footage that I could gather, so I'd say it's about time to pitch some of those game files in Wii Sports to see what we can find. And as per usual, if you want to take a look at the stuff that I don't talk about in this video, such as some of the unused parameters, or the regional differences of what the announcer says for baseball between the Japanese and international versions of Wii Sports, there will be a link in the description below. Let's start off by looking at these unused models of 4 Mii bodies and a hand. These models were left over from the development of Pack Project, the codename for all of the prototype games being made at Nintendo that I mentioned before, until they were sorted and separated into 2 different games. In fact, these unused models, which are named Ava Body A2 and A3, Ava Body B2 and B3, and Ava Hand A, are used in several of the games on Wii Play. Ava Body A2 and A3 seem to be male Mii bodies, while B2 and B3 are female body types. A2 and B2 in particular also have rigging bones within their models that allow them to be fully animated and used, as you can see here. I'm gonna do something a bit different here and organize the files by the games of Wii Sports, just so that these files can be a bit more organized. Starting with baseball, the only unused graphic that's left over are 2 generic guest Mii A faces named Face Dummy A and Face Dummy B. These graphics can specifically be found within the files for the baseball scoreboard, so it's fair to assume that this graphic was used to test the rendering of the Mii faces on the scoreboard for the 2 teams. There are also 2 unused sounds for the announcer to say in the baseball files. Let's take a listen to them.
Double play. Triple play.
Some of you might be asking what exactly is a double or triple play. I'll admit that I don't know the first thing about baseball, but from what I understand, a double play is a phrase when there are 2 outs in a current game. A triple play is the same thing except with, well, 3 outs instead of 2. This is significant because these announcer clips possibly hint at the game being more complex than it is in the final game. However, as I said before, they scrapped making the games more intricate to make the deadline for the Wii's release. Boxing only has 2 leftover graphics relating to its game, that being this screenshot and these number textures. The screenshot is just showing a low quality picture of a boxing match taking place, and really has nothing notable or nothing that seems out of the ordinary about it. The number textures, on the other hand, were most likely going to be used with the dodging training mode minigame, as it's only bundled in with the boxing game files. The textures would eventually be used in Wii Play for billiards in that game, and are named Ball 0 through Ball 9 respectively, with the cue ball being Ball 0. With the bowling game, we can get a glimpse of an early version of the bowling lane. Now, supposedly, this bowling lane is the same one used during E3 2006, but as of the making of this video, I couldn't find E3 footage that has bowling in it, so it's impossible to determine if this is indeed from E3 2006. The wood paneling of the lane has a slightly darker shade of brown compared to its final counterpart, and the gutters are colored blue instead of brown like in the final game. The curtain wall in the back of the lane, just above the pin area, has a different design of a checkerboard texture with a crown in the middle, and these 3 arrows were moved from the top of the design to the bottom by the final game. The file named trialdata.bin contains the pin setups for the picking up spares minigame in the training section. While 20 of these setups are used in the final game, there are 30 setups within the file itself. Stages 21 through 30 could be considered some of the most difficult pin setups of the game, as some setups would require you to ricochet one pin into others to complete these challenges. And before you question why these stages are named 1 through 10, it's because the modder loaded these stages into the game by replacing the first 10 stages. As for tennis, honestly, there is only one single file to look at that goes unused, and that is this unused head model. The model, named Ava Head, has the unusual aspect of being colored to a Mii's favorite color. So for example, if a Mii's favorite color was blue, this entire head would be colored blue. Let's go over the final game that we have yet to talk about, golf. Golf has several unused courses located within the common/RP golf scene, or stage/RP golf scene folder, depending on if the version of the game is 1.0 or 1.01 respectively. The file name glfcourse.e3.carc contains the data for the golf course seen at E3 2006. However, the textures of the course have been updated since then, and the trees seen at E3 were removed altogether. glfcourseangle.carc contains different types of course slopes, including some in the sand. This course was most likely used for testing the collision and physics of the game. The file glfcoursesurvey.carc contains a large open circular field with markers on the ground. The course seems to be a driving range of some sort, as driving ranges in real life usually contain these yardage markers. Many have concluded that the course seems to be some sort of unused training minigame, despite the name of the file not fitting that description. Finally, file glfcourse.fc18.carc contains an unused course that's a bit special. This course is a remake of Course 18 from the classic Famicom and NES game, Golf. It's even obvious by the file name. Though, it's important to mention that a lot of the golf courses in Wii Sports are taken from the NES game, as, for example, Holes 1 and 8 are remakes of NES golf courses 1 and 9 respectively. Though, as you can see for this unused course, it was never finished and still uses early textures similar to the ones seen at E3 2006, like the trees in the background. So those were the beta files of Wii Sports. Even if there weren't a lot of interesting leftovers found within the files, you have to expect that when the development of the game was focused on the simplicity of its motion controls. Nintendo had just developed a new console, and the team had to figure out how to use these new controllers and make a fun game out of it, all the while making it in time for the console's launch date. The result of that effort was the making of one of the most iconic Nintendo titles of all time that nearly everyone in the world recognizes. While it is true that some ideas were cut from the initial game, they would eventually be incorporated into the other games in the series. The original Wii Sports, though, is a game that is simplistic in its scope, yet was revolutionary for its implementation. My name's NinFan237, and I'll see you guys next time. Hey, thanks for watching the video. Welcome to the Endcard, where hopefully I won't take that much more of your time because I don't have a script in front of me, and this is going to be pretty much all ad-lib. Or as ad-lib as it can possibly be. First and foremost, for those of you who've been with the channel for a while, you might be wondering what's this VTuber talking to me right now. Well, I posted an update video about like what's been going on with my life as well as what's going to go on with the channel. The day before this video was uploaded, so you can go click that. You can go click that card up there when it appears to see about the updates, as well as what's gonna go on with this, like, you know, V2 model. Why is it here? So anyways, besides that, secondly, if you like this video, please give it a like, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, then subscribe and ring the notification bell, and as well as make any comments down below if you like it or not. If you want to follow me, I have a Twitter at NinFan237. A link will be down in the description below for you guys if you want to follow me on like my daily happenings or like my daily thoughts on video games or like whatever is happening like currently. As well as if I made any mistakes in the video, please feel free to comment below. Because I'm only human and there was only so much I can actually like. If I made any mistakes, please feel free to comment below, as despite this model talking to you right now, I'm a human being, and I'm prone to make mistakes because that's how humans are. As well as if you want to drop a few donations to help keep this channel going, or to like to help me and make my channel and these videos better, There will be a Buy Me a Coffee donation page down below. Again, I'm not forcing anybody. If you don't want to donate, then don't. If you want to drop like $3 because like, hey, this guy's pretty cool or whatever, then please feel free to check out the link below for that Buy Me a Coffee donation page. As well for the next beta files, I'm thinking of doing an considering that the 20th, was it the 20th? I think it's the 20th. Considering that the 20th anniversary of Wind Waker is actually gonna be this year, I'm thinking that the next beta files will actually be a Wind Waker Redux episode. Some of you who are very, very old subscribers might know that I already did a video on Wind Waker, but that video is not only considerably old, but it's also like completely like the audio is garbage. Okay, let's just face it right now. The audio is garbage. The audio is straight garbage. It's like really garbage. So yeah, I was thinking of actually doing a Redux episode for that. Hopefully I can get it done in time before the 20th anniversary, but knowing my luck, I probably won't. So yeah, that's gonna be the next Beta Files episode, as well as check out, please feel free to check out my new series that I'm calling the Archive Files. It's a series that's based on like telling the development and history of a game, or like different things in the game, and its very impacts on like history or like gaming history. It's kind of a retrospective series, but not really, more of a gaming history series. I don't know what you would call it, but anyways, so the first video of that series is called is about the game Sakura Wars. It's a Japanese only. Currently speaking, as of the making of this video, it's a Japanese only Sega Saturn game. Please check that out. The card will appear right now, hopefully. Yeah, that should be about it. Yeah, that should be about it. So, my name's Ninfan237. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.